Hi guys, welcome to your week 27 U.S. history launch, and we're going to start a new project this week. It's called the Gilded Age. So we're going to roll out this project and learn a little bit about what the Gilded Age is. So just a quick background, the Gilded Age was the time in the late 1800s, so about the 1870s to the early 1900s. It's a term that was coined by the author Mark Twain. And what he meant by that is that from the surface, it seemed to be a glittering time and everything seemed to be very ritzy. But underneath there was corruption. It was the rise of big business at the expense of poor workers and immigrants, and that's kind of what is suggested to this political cartoon to the left. So the industrialists, or the people that owned these factories and made the big bucks, they made a ton of money and profited off these low wages that they gave their workers, the poor working conditions, the poor housing conditions, and they just kind of kept squeezing all the money out of them. So you're going to learn more about what was happening during the Gilded Age and the conditions of the workers. So first of all, I'm just going to show you a couple pictures, and I just want you to think about what you notice in these photos. So after looking at those, I'm sure that you can tell the common denominator is that these are kids that are working in different industrial type jobs. And these are also very modern pictures. These are modern day. This is not from 100 years ago. So all over the world, in Africa, Asia, South America, there are still children that are being forced to work these very hard, laborsome jobs. And the question I want you guys to think about is, why don't you think you see these in the United States? Why don't we see kids working? Why are you guys going to school and not going to a factory to work? But during the Gilded Age, you would have seen this quite a bit. So this is child labor in the Gilded Age. These ones are actually, these next couple pictures are from coal mines in Pennsylvania. So a lot of these could even be friends or ancestors of your grandparents and great-grandparents. This is actually from the coal mines of Pennsylvania. They would send these kids down and be rooting through all day, just sitting like that, completely filthy, hurting themselves. This one's from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. So again, they're sending these kids down there making next to nothing for very little money into these horrible conditions. And what I want you to do is, we're just going to watch this a little bit. It's a 2-minute video just to kind of get a quick overview of the Gilded Age again, and child labor, why we don't see it today, and those kind of things.
In the late 1700s, most people worked in the fields on land they did not own. Those who owned the land, called aristocrats, lived refined lives in elegant manor houses. Servants raised their children and did their housework. The landowners and the people who worked for them depended upon each other. It was a system that had existed for centuries. In towns across England and the United States, a series of extraordinary innovations would alter the way people lived and worked for the next 150 years. Inventors had found new ways to harness nature's energy. They built new kinds of machines, powered by water, steam, and coal. The new machines replaced hand-powered tools. They did the same work, only cheaper and faster. Much of the work was done outside the home, in specially designed buildings, the first factories. Mechanization began in the textile mills of England, where one machine attached to a spinning wheel could do the work of 50 people. Fuel, clothing, and food all became more affordable. With the development of locomotives and steamboats, manufactured goods could now be sold halfway around the world. Families moved from the villages of their ancestors to new industrial towns. And a new class of people emerged, workers who produced goods. Industrialists, the people who owned the factories, employed hundreds, sometimes thousands of people. And they made enormous profits in their industrial centers. But while the Industrial Revolution brought wealth to some and jobs for others, it came with a price tag. Pollution from coal-powered factories turned the cities black. Lack of housing created the first urban slums. And the demand for more and more goods and higher profits brought the exploitation of workers, including children. Some of the worst conditions were seen in the textile mills of New England. In the 1830s, a 10-year-old mill girl described her life.
We were paid $2 a week, and the working hours of all the girls extended from 5 o'clock in the morning till 7 in the evening, with 1.5 hour for breakfast and for dinner.
It was the hiring of children, some as young as 5 years old, throughout the 1800s and early 1900s, that outraged the public. Workers and reformers protested. They formed unions and associations and fought for government regulations to limit the workday and protect children. These laws helped address many of the abuses brought on by the Industrial Revolution.
Okay, so that's the Industrial Revolution in a nutshell, basically. So those are some of the questions and the issues that you're going to be discussing in this project and learning about. So through inquiry, which is a series of questioning, you're going to answer those questions based on resources and documents, and you're going to build towards one main compelling question. So the question that you should have in the back of your mind the entire time you're working on this project is, can greed be good? The project outline, the first part that you're going to do in the first 3 checkpoints is the inquiry on the Gilded Age. You're going to use visual and written resources to answer supporting questions that lead you towards being able to answer the compelling question of the inquiry, which again is, can greed be good? The second part of the project, you're going to research income inequality today. You're going to conduct some research on the issue of income inequality. And then the third one, your final product, you're going to make a public service announcement about your research. And that's when you're going to educate and inform others about your research through your public service announcement. The cognitive skills that are being assessed for this project, so again, this is what you're scored on in the final product. It's argumentative claim, which you have been scored on, I think, in almost every single project. Your selection of evidence, so going into those documents and finding those quotes that support your claim. Explanation of evidence, which is your ability to explain that piece of evidence or that quote and how it supports your claim. So this quote shows that, or this quote supports my claim because, and then how well you explain it. Selecting relevant sources. So again, not using Wikipedia because it's not a reliable source. We've said that for a couple projects now. Finding relevant sources that are going to help you do some good research on your topic. How well you use multimedia in written projects. So using pictures and visuals to enhance your project. And then this is a new one that you guys have not done yet, which is justifying and constructing an explanation. So you're going to explain something to the public and justify it with reasons. For checkpoint 1, which is due next week, I'd like you to click into that document. What you're going to be doing is looking at the political, social, and economic factors that brought about industrial growth. What you're going to do is open the document set and going to explore those. I suggest highlighting them or taking some notes. You're going to look for one piece of evidence that shows political conditions that caused industrial growth, one piece of evidence that shows social conditions that drove industrial growth, and one piece of evidence that shows economic conditions that caused industrial growth. So where you're going to find those is off to the right side is where all the resources are. And your documents here, I think there's 3 or 4 documents. So again, you're looking for political, social, and economic conditions that caused industrial growth. So you're going to look at some of these tables and charts and kind of read into those and see what they mean. What do these maps mean? Again, your ability to explain what a map or a chart means is something you're being scored on in this project. So most of them are not really text-based this time. It's going to be analyzing different pictures, cartoons, graphs, maps. So those are the 4 documents that you're using for this checkpoint. And then you would just compile your answer into checkpoint 1. If you have questions, please let me know. And your reflection for this week, if you go back into the Google Classroom, I'd like you to let me know what is the compelling question that you should be thinking about while working on this project. If you forget, go back a couple slides. I said it out loud a couple times. It's also on one of the slides. So again, you're looking for what is the compelling question.